Kia ora everybody, welcome along to the League and Order podcast. My name's Marc Peard, with me Tony Kemp. Then there were two. No need to find out who the finalist is.
That's what happens when you lose, mate. That's what happens. You run for the hills, Lavender. You go up there, you go and spend some time up there in that bush, and you find yourself, girl.
Find yourself,
right?
girl.
And Blake, I'm telling you what, priorities, mate. You're going to end up with a big, fat beer belly.
That's right. Blake's out on the lash. He's I think it's a Sky boozy lunch with all the talent, so he's out there doing that. And Lavina, well, she's actually out of reception, so we can say she's out bush. And what did she owe you in the end?
Excuses, just like Penrith, mate. Full of excuses.
Full of excuses. Let's get straight into it. 2020 champs, the Melbourne Storm.
Picked it, Mark.
You did pick that. You had your smoky. Your dark horse was going to be Newcastle.
Yeah, lost too many. Lost McCulloch. Ponga was sort of in and out. You know, he's like Lavender, I guess, once a month. Comes up with a winner. I just thought Melbourne with Cameron Smith. Best hooker in the year, best hooker on the day. What about the TAB? Who was it? Paying out $5 million.
Yeah, it was Sportsbet in Australia.
Paying out $5 million on Cameron Smith getting the Clive Churchill and Peppenhausen picking it up. I'll tell you, there are a lot of happy Australians cashing in that ticket early.
Totally. So what happens, and we'll just quickly revisit this. So the Clive Churchill medal gets awarded, obviously, at the end of the game. Sportsbet in Australia decided, you know what, this is a sure thing. Let's pay out everybody who's got it. And it's called an early payout. They do it quite often with all the other risque kind of betting agencies, which I love, where they decide, this is a foregone conclusion. Instead of losing more money on people jumping on it now, let's go ahead and pay everybody out at half-time. So it's just after half-time they decided to part with all that cash and give it to those people who'd placed the bet that Cameron Smith would indeed be the Clive Churchill winner. Come the end of the game, though, it's Peppenhausen, and they have to pay out again to all the people who took Peppenhausen. They can't go ahead and take that money back, and with good reason, because I think at halftime there were a few people who actually took the cash and ran, knowing that there might be, it might actually be closer than what Sportsbet were thinking. And I mean, fitting Clive Churchill winner, though, right? Peppenhausen was outstanding in the final.
Yeah, well, you rewind a week, I'd given a bet. And hopefully all of our Aussie people were listening to the show that Cameron Smith was a stand-up for the Clive Churchill. So even if you did take Cameron Smith, you cashed in at half-time, you made some money.
Exactly.
But Peppenhausen, that kid's got some speed, man. When he made that break from the scrum, Nelson Asefa-Solomona, every time he carried the ball against Penrith, he hurt them. He really, really hurt them. For me, he was the best forward on the park. And that inside show from Peppenhausen to Asefa-Solomona, they didn't know what to do. They had to stop and check Asefa-Solomona, and that just gave him half an inch. And he has so much speed. And to pick up the Clive Churchill at this young age, Billy Slater's obviously picked that up before. I just think that kid's got a big future.
It's an odd one too, because it didn't feel like in the grand final that Penrith looked out of place or looked like they were shell-shocked. They were in it and they just weren't getting the tries. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like they got absolutely trousered straight away. It felt like this was an arm wrestle, but they just weren't getting their points on the board. And I think Gus Gould said at half-time, this is an unfair-looking scoreline to Penrith. They just need to keep their heads down and work hard, and they can get back into this game. And sure enough, they did, but it just turned out to be a little too late. A little too late. A couple of yellow cards thrown in there as well. And I was that guy who jumped on Penrith at half-time and thought, man, if they do it, why not? And I think the odds at that stage were paying around 501 to 1.
Is that right?
They had completely put them out.
That's Headingley, mate. That's that Headingley bet with England and Australia, I think it was, when it was like 500 to 1, and some of the team members wouldn't have put £5 on themselves to come back and win that game. So
totally. So I put $10 on that, and as the yellow card came out, I think with about 10 to go, the odds dropped dramatically. All of a sudden, the TAB were like, quickly pull those odds down. And sure enough, I cashed out actually with 5 to go, thinking, Penrith's just not going to have enough to get over the top. And I was even nervous that I'd cashed out because my return was looking really good. But I did make $4 on the bet. So very happy with those odds. But man, that comeback from Penrith it made it worth the while, right? If you'd been watching the first 3 quarters of the game, you probably would have gone, man, what a dumb NRL grand final, because you do want to see an arm wrestle, a tussle, but Then comes Penrith, then they come back, and it ended up being a really, really exciting finish.
Yeah, look, I think what Phil Gould was talking about with the previous 17 games, that it was unfair that they were 22 block at half time, and they had enough ball. You remember right from the kickoff, they get the ball back and they can't do anything against Melbourne. They're fit as anything, defending stoutly on their line and keeping Penrith out, the team that's finished one on the competition. And I think what Phil Gould was saying, it's pretty unfair. They've had their fair share of the football, but they just couldn't get across the line. When the accolades should have been heaped on Melbourne, because I thought, at 22-0, and Sully drops that ball down the right edge when Hughes puts that nice little bendy grubber through, and just doesn't get his hands on it, and then Brinko Lee makes that break down that right hand side with an overlap and just has to just pass it to Sully, and he scores in the corner. It could have easily been 32-0.
Totally.
And from that, the momentum shifted, and Penrith just came back and back, and they were, the kicking of the chair from Bellamy and the in the box, which is theatre. It's everyone's looking up there. Look, Daniel Anderson was exactly the same, mate. He'd kick holes in walls and all sorts of stuff. But Bellamy, you love him because of the theatre that he brings to the game, kicking chairs. What was happening was that he saw that his boys had switched off. I think it was about 26 minutes to go, and they thought they had the game won. And you could hear him, literally hear him through the TV saying, get down that football field and tell them the game's not over. They've got to. And at the same time, I don't know if you remember, Mark, but the cameras switched to the huddle, and Cameron Smith is in the middle, and he's given it to them as Bellamy's given it to the sideline coaches. So they knew that the boys had taken their foot off the throat, and I think if they just stuck to their original plan, it was also unfortunate that the players that came off, Tino. When he came off the bench, the big boy for Melbourne, he was shell-shocked. He didn't go too hot. The Cheese come on, he didn't go too hot. You know what I mean? So they didn't have that effect that they normally have on the game. And it wasn't until he brought his big boys back in, Christian Welch, Jesse Bromwich, I thought was outstanding as well. And, of course, Nelson Asafa Solomon. I thought he broke his wrist when he went off.
He was holding
it. He was carrying it. That they got back into the game. But by that stage, Penrith were back within 10 points. And I thought a really good call from Cleary when they scored that when he scored that last try and stopped the clock and said, I'm not going for the kick.
Totally. That was awesome. I didn't know you could do that.
Well, yeah, of course. And just in your 79th minute and 57 seconds gone, and he's gone, stop. I'm not going for goal, because the referee has to stop it.
Totally.
They have to walk back to halfway to kick. He had 3 seconds to go, going, well, let's just play some ab lib here and see if we can get over the line and make it take it into extra time. So I'm sitting there watching the game going, oh my God, it's going to turn into one of the greatest grand finals ever.
I know. It went from just a terrible grand final, and when I say terrible, not for Melbourne Storm fans, not for rugby league fans in general, like the play was still there. And you're right, Melbourne Storm left a few points out on the field as well. So they could have been well ahead. And it would have changed the complexion of the second half again, totally. But it did turn in. Those last 10 minutes, it turned into one of the best grand finals. And if they'd managed to tie it up, if they'd managed to return that last kickoff and tie it up, we would have been crowing from the roofs. That would have been awesome.
Well, it's sort of like, down to that last play of the game where Jonathan Thurston kicks the ball and it hits the post.
Yeah. And
then they go in extra time and he kicks it and wins it. The fairy tales were coming off. Imagine if Naden scored the try. Being dropped the week before, Tyrone May goes in. I thought that was a pretty big ballsy call from Ivan. We spoke about it last week about Tyrone May getting the grand final jersey in front of Naden. I thought he fucked up, seriously. I thought Ivan should have left Naden in the centres because he could score points. You know what I mean? They hadn't lost all year. I think his try tally compared to May's was off the Richter. And he's calling it a defensive lapse. I think the efficiency and rates were like 80 to 60%. But in a grand final, you know what I mean? And then when Naden came on, I don't know if you noticed, Naden sparked him, mate.
Yeah.
Like every carry, like he was just a handful. I'm thinking, I bet you Ivan's going to go back and watch it and think, man, what if I had that kid out there for the full 80?
Yeah. If if I had,
He's got.
could
I tell you what,
have-
he's got lots of ifs. He'd be
Yeah.
still sitting in. Where would he be sitting now? Having a beer. He'd probably be sitting. He's a Manly boy on the Northern Beaches Island, so he'd be probably sitting in the Stain, and he'd be looking at the TV and hoping that it doesn't come on, play the grand final like they do in Sydney every day of the week.
Yeah. I just want to revisit the Craig Bellamy behaviour, because I understand how it's rugby league, you want the drama and this and that. But it's genuine coach shithousery, the behaviour that he puts up on the big screen. And it is. Like, you cannot act like that as a grown-ass man in any other job or any other role. If you're yelling at an employee or someone who's below you on the table of paychecks, like, you can't do that. And it's terrible behaviour. Like, the way he'd grabbed the assistant coach's mic, he'd turned it over so he could use it, and he was going bananas, swearing and shaking of his head, and he was and he was right. The game wasn't over, and they had taken the foot off the throat. And Penrith, you could just feel things were starting to change. But, dude, come on, man! Like, just pull it back at Peard. Like, you don't need to be that. And then when they scored, Nathan Cleary goes straight through the middle and carries 3 players. Nathan Cleary, of all people, carrying 3 players over the line. He gets up, he kicks the seat, it goes flying into a wall. You can hear him swearing away. And then the worst part of it, this was, and I know, look, I'm being facetious here because I actually do quite enjoy the drama, but it's shithousery at its highest degree and shouldn't be allowed because it does set a terrible example. The worst part about all of this is when the Storm eventually get the victory, all the assistant coaches are hugging and dancing around and grabbing each other, and they're so happy. And Bellamy, pissed off as, just reaches and grabs his diary and storms out the door. Doesn't celebrate with his team, just absolute shithousery at the highest. But, I mean, what more can you say? In the same instance that people talk about Michael Jordan being an arsehole as a teammate, but had to be a winner, the same excuse will be used for Craig Bellamy's behaviour and the ability to get away with it simply on the backs that he's a winner.
Because they're going to do that. They're going to do a 60 minutes on him, and they're going to do a documentary on Bellamy. He's got one more year to go, and that's what he's going to be remembered for.
It's passion. Here we go. It's passion. Kemp, you were a passionate coach.
Yeah.
But you weren't acting like a buffoon in the box. Because why?
Not at all. Just look, everyone's different. Ivan's like, he doesn't kick the things around. And what about Wayne Bennett? Like, you can hardly raise a smile from him. I'll tell you, there'll be one area that'll be really happy when Craig Bellamy retires, and it's probably his heart.
Yeah.
With the stress levels that he puts through himself. But, it's
he'll probably balloon in weight.
It's a cultural thing for them that behaviour drives, when people are watching the support. That's why I call it theatre. It drives the supporters, it drives the fans, it drives the people that don't like Melbourne. The players look at it and go to Bellamy. I thought the Cheese's comment afterwards saying, mate, he does nothing, Bellamy. It's all Cameron Smith. I pissed my pants and I was thinking, geez, wait till pre-season. You're going to cop it, son.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's unfortunate that is the part that he's probably going to be remembered about because, on Matty Johns' shows, they take the piss out of it.
Yeah.
The professor and that, they get the stuff up and they make shit up and it's all bellyache, bellyache, you know what I mean? And I just think...
It's strange to me. It's strange behaviour that you are at the top of your game and yet you are screaming and throwing tantrums like that during a stressful moment. In the
modern era, and I just think he should be recognised from being, I think the greatest coach that we've had over the last 20 years.
Yep.
I seriously think that. I think Robinson's come in, he's been all right. Bennett's he was 80s, 90s, but I think in the last 20 years since Melbourne have hit the ground running in 1999. And then Bellamy coming through and taking over with those young kids. He's been our best coach over 2 decades. So
don't focus the camera on him then. If you know he's got a behaviour problem.
But that's what I mean. It's theatre, mate. That's why they go there.
I get the theatre, and I just think that it sets an example that as an NRL head coach, you are allowed to be and do and say whatever if you want in the hot, heated moments, and that's how this workplace sits.
Imagine HR.
It'd be horrendous. And the lines move, Kempy. Like we've learnt over the last 5 years at least. There's the Me Too movement. There's bullying in the workplace. There's bullying in schools. Like the line is so far past what Bellamy did on Sunday. We laugh. We give him a laugh and we say, give him a pass, man. Look, he just won another title. Like that's what works.
There was a shot. I don't know if you saw it with Jerome Hughes and young Brandon Smith walk in and they noticed that the camera was on. Did you see that?
No.
And they noticed that the camera was on and, that they had planned it. they had planned this, and they looked at the camera, and Jerome Hughes looks up the camera and taps the cheese on the shoulder, and he looks up the camera, and then they do it all in reverse, and they walk back, and they're doing it all in reverse. It was hilarious, mate. This is pre-game. And then they walk forward, and who should be watching them but Bellyache? And I'm thinking to myself, it's a real, I guess, a accolade to Bellyache that he's moved through the eras and allowed kids to prepare that way. Because I guarantee you, in the 90s, you were not allowed to do that. You know what I mean?
I get that.
Even the early 2000s, I remember walking into the change rooms. We were playing at Mount Smart there, and Wairangi Korpu's doing Clinton Tupi's hair. It was one of my first games as a coach, and I'm looking at them going, geez, I would have got a slap if that was me from one of the old guys back in the day. You know, like used to just rub your face with water and spike your hair with a bit of fucking water, and you get out there and play. But these two were sitting there and. Yeah, they had the wax and they're managing the hairstyle, and I'm just thinking, geez, times have changed, But
I would say that Wairangi Korpu is still doing.
100%. And Toops has a pretty good afro. I still think it's pretty hard to beat. I forgot the name of the rapper at the time when he did the Coolio hair, dude. With the beads and the plaits and all that. Yeah, and first carry, I think he hurt his knee to sit on the sideline with that. With
Shit,
the
his hair
cameras
looked
face
good.
on him.
His hair looked good when they carried him off.
But my point being that Bellyache being around for so long, and the transition of kids into the team with different attitudes, he's taken it in a stride. And you always knew that going to the finals. We spoke about that last week. If anyone was going to be prepared for a final, even through the COVID situation, it was going to be Melbourne. They know what it takes to win a game. And then I just thought Cameron Smith, I don't know if you remember in the game, he's still pointing to players saying, go here, go here. There were two players they worked over in that game. It was the number 9, it was the number 11. Every time Kikau got him, he got grass cut. People went in and they just made sure they stopped them. But they worked over the number 9 defensively. Yeah. Like he would top the tackle count. He just had no energy, mate. Yeah. So, and fit as he was, Kurosawa, he just had nothing left to give. And Smith was just going, he's there, mate. Just pass him. Get in here and head. You can see him. He's pointing at Christian Welsh. And he's going this way. Hit the ball, and he hits him right in behind the ruck. And who's standing there? Kurosawa, another tackle around the legs.
And Kurosawa, and so what you're saying is the amount of times he has to tackle, then stand back up, and tackle and stand back. He's left nothing in the tank. He's left nothing in the tank.
So he gets the dummy half, but he's looking to pass because he's still getting his breath back. He can't shoot out and make any errors. And defensively, Melbourne were in that first 30-35 minutes. They were just on song. They came out all guns blazing, and the kick. I thought, that got the try down the right hand, their first try, when it looked like a shepherd, and they put the kick. Kick in down there on the right hand side. I thought, he could have planned a little bit better than that. I think if you went back and you watched Melbourne's finals appearances over the last couple of years, they go really aggressive defensively. Like they go together and they go, right, we're going to back ourselves to stop the ball getting to the outside. And what Yale did at that stage, being in the middle of the park, so you're thinking, 13s aren't really ball players anymore. They're just another front row thrown on the back of a scrum.
Yep, hit them up.
But Yale, he just instinctively went, geez, they're right up on the offside position. I'm just going to thread one through. And I thought that's Nathan Cleary could have done that a little bit better in that first half, when they were really shooting in on them. But you can't do that. I guess when your 9 is tired, your halfback's off his game slightly, and Kikau's not making the breaks down that left edge.
Because he's been grass cut.
Because it's been grass cut all the time. So, again, I'm just talking about the way that Bellamy coached. The strategy around finals is first class. And that's why, you go, well, Melbourne are favourites. They're going to be hard to beat.
All right. Well, let's look at the comments of Brandon Smith at the end of that game, because I'm interested to hear from you, Kempi. How much of that victory, how much of that championship grand final win goes down to Bellamy? And how much is it actually Cameron Smith who does it? Because Brandon was very, very comical when he did say, look, mate, I hope the old fella doesn't leave. Cameron Smith, he coaches this team. He does all the coaching. He does all the hard work. And Bellamy, he does nothing during the week. But, I mean, how much does that ring true? How important were either all?
He's taking the piss. He's taking the piss. But every team has that Brandon Smith. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a look at Sydney City, it's Jared Warrior Hargreaves. You know, they're jovial, they're jokers, they're like glue to a team. You know,
They just happen to be Kiwis as well.
yeah, and
Good
they
dudes.
get a little bit more latitude because the coach knows what they bring to the team.
Totally.
And his relation, I'll tell you right now, his relationship. It was really striking to me what he said, because in between all the joking, what he said was, "Hey, I hope Cameron Smith is going to be here next year so he can win me another ring." You know, this isn't about Cameron Smith retiring, mate. That was really telling, because what he was saying was, man, I hope he actually plays, because I'm not going anywhere. I want another ring.
Yeah,
And,
true.
you know,
I didn't even think of that. But they need him. They like him. He's got another year. He's got plenty of tread left on the tyres, in his opinion. Let's do it.
And that's what I say. You know, I think the retirement will come together. I think Bellamy and Smith will retire together.
Well, that's interesting, because the NFL has a great situation right now that is very similar to Melbourne Storm and how they've run their entire organisation. So the New England Patriots have Bill Belichick, who's the head coach of their team. They've successful over the last decade, have been easily the most successful franchise in American sport, probably. So they lost their quarterback, Tom Brady. He left, and he's gone off to play to someone else, and they've had him since God knows how long. So there, all of a sudden, you get a very similar situation to having the Melbourne Storm. They've still got Bill Belichick and the Patriots. They've still got this organisation. It's well run, good general manager. All they've lost is that most important player. And how do they go forward? They're having a shocking season. And it'll be I would be so interested to see just how important Cameron Smith is to the Melbourne Storm's success. If you took him out, does Bellamy still have the game plan? Does he bring someone up and put that person in that situation? Because the Patriots have got a good quarterback in Cam Newton, but he's just not Tom Brady. And it all kind of worked in unison. It all balanced out.
Yeah, 100%. You're right on the money. And I think that's why Harry Grant and why that Bellamy doesn't want to let him go, because he potentially can fill Cameron's shoes, which are pretty big boots to fill. I don't think Brandon Smith can fill Cameron's shoes, you know, because he's more of a nugget, you know. He's more of a battler.
He's a sometimes food, right?
Yeah, which Smith is a brain, you know. Look, he's a integral cog in the whole structure. I don't know if you listened to his after-match speech. Like, I listened to the whole thing, and when he finished, I said, mate, he didn't miss anyone. Like, he didn't miss anybody, from both teams to the crowd, to the NRL, to the ladies in the office at Melbourne, to his coaching staff, finished with his players, and then he went back to his wife and the girls, and then very last he said, the V on our jersey is for V for victory, V for Melbourne. You know what I mean?
Brilliant.
And I'm just like, that's what I said. I said, that was really good. You know, like, so can they fill his boots? I think Cronk and Slater were different.
Yeah.
Again, I just think
They were parts of the vehicle.
And Cameron Smith knew that.
Yeah.
And he would have been speaking to Bellamy and say, you just give me speed at the back, you give me someone in the halves that I can control, like Jerome Hughes, you know, because next minute they're going to get Munster, next minute they're going to get Pepperhausen. Jerome Hughes is playing fullback, and they go, shit, well, let's give him you know, Cronk was the same, he was playing hooker.
Yeah.
Or let's put him in, you know, the only immovable part is the
Cameron
nine.
Smith, yeah.
So I'm listening to Cheese. The question you asked is, how much of that do you take? I think that every team needs that person. They're the glue. You know, they'll be watching that, playing that, laughing about it. I think the funnier one was the week before when he walked in and he stole Bellamy's grandkid's lollipop. Did you see that?
That was awesome.
You know, the airport. It's just he didn't know the camera was there and took the lollipop off a kid, and everyone has those guys. You know, so. They won't. They'll look to keep Brandon Smith. I don't think he's going to. I think he said that much on the game. But geez, they were chuffed too. The way he spoke was really real for me.
Yeah,
it was a kid from Waiheke Island.
It was good, nice to hear him say the amount of sacrifices his parents have made.
That's right. You know, I'm going to take this home to my mum and dad.
What do you reckon one of those rings is worth, though?
Oh, I think they're worth $2.5 grand.
$2.5 grand worth of piss. That's what he was hoping to
well,
cash in for.
I just hope that there's someone who can drink as much with me. I'll go to him, and then I'll go. They'll go, what about at a car? Yeah, but I'm going to need someone.
I'm not going to let you leave this conversation though without getting off the fence. More important to Melbourne's success, Cameron Smith or Craig Bellamy?
Oh, Cameron Smith.
So Bellamy
by country mile.
Yeah.
I don't think Melbourne has a success with Cameron Smith. There's a lot of luck in rugby league. You know, and he's the luckiest. I'm telling you now, he is the luckiest coach in the world, Bellamy. You know, Mark Murray brought those boys down. Bellamy got to work with them and had them and you get 3 immortals in your team.
Just the 3.
You just get, Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, and Cameron Smith, mate.
You're happy with 3?
And not only
potentially,
that, not only that they're immortals, but they're the spine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's the luckiest guy in the world. And at 37, I thought Cameron Smith was a worthy Clive Churchill medal winner.
Totally.
You know
and so did a lot of other people.
At
Even
37.
Sportsbet did.
Yeah, so it's a. I think another year comes around for Cameron. I think he'll waltz through it. The part that might be a bit challenging for him is COVID. You know what I mean? But people are saying that this is the if you're analysing, this is the argument. They're saying Cameron Smith won't play. Well, one of the benefits of COVID for Melbourne is that they stay in Brisbane. Which is where his family like to be.
Yeah, and you know what? It didn't do them too badly this season. They managed to pull together and work well together.
Yeah.
All right, this is a perfect time to do this. Let's move forward. Let's do early season favourites to win the 2021 competition. We're going to be the first to throw it out there. First bit. So who's going to win the comp? And then I want to know, where do the Warriors finish?
Oh, look, personally, I think that on the rosters, I think Penrith and Melbourne are 1 and 2 again.
Yep.
And Sydney City are, depending on who they replace Flanagan with, are back up there. I don't see anyone else. I think 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 are a lottery. But I think the 3 teams again next year to beat. Melbourne, all dependent on Cameron Smith. If they lose Cameron Smith, I think Penrith are dead set favourites. Like dead set favourites. They don't lose anyone. Their team is young. We've made plenty of comment on that. He's building a grand final winning team, Ivan, and I think next year they'll be there again. As for the Warriors,
come on, let us buy a lottery ticket. Let us get in there,
mate. They're not going to make the 8.
Oh, fuck off!
They're not going to make the 8. Look,
why?
Unless they sign a hooker, they will not make the 8 in this competition.
Fuck it, I'll play hooker for them.
Mate, unfortunately, look, I like the 2 boys that they got running around there, but they're not finals bound with the hooking with the bloke who touches the ball the most in the middle of the field at the moment on their roster.
Well, he's hoping for a really good off season where they do pick up a hooker that's just floating around that is a world beater, a change of the ocean.
And that's
I can take that as a fan. I can take that if we got a good hooker, things would be different. And when I say not necessarily a good hooker, but if we increase our hooking stocks to be a team that has a player who can run it around the field and drive it during these new rules, and knowing that we're going to be probably in COVID.
Personally, I think Cody Nikorima could fill that role. I think that they can move Turner into the halves and Cody Nikorima up, or even move Roger up and put Turner at the back and put Cody Nikorima in the front. I think they have the players, whether Brownie is thinking along those lines, who knows?
Who would be brave enough to bring Roger out of the fullback position, though? Because he's the best fullback in the comp.
So was Darren Lockyer. You know what I mean?
I suppose.
So was Greg Inglis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good point.
You got players that play in fullback, but they tend to, as their knowledge grows and their wisdom around how the football game is played, they move forward and they start to dictate really closer to the ruck. So, I think we're all guilty of it. I think one of the parts of the Warriors who aren't really a development club have tried to buy premierships without developing their players. And I always talk about Manu Vatuvei. Manu Vatuvei hit our grounds as a 16-year-old and debuted really early on the wing and played his whole career there. Mate, we should have moved him in. Yeah. He should have been in he should have played centres, and he should have ended up in the back row. He was big and fast enough to cause a lot of havoc. But they got stuck on the wing, and he ended up being there for the whole of his career. And that's why I talk about Dave Fusitua and Ken Mamalo. They're looking at centres, which has always been an issue of filling in the club. We always fill in them with internationals. And here we have these 2 big players here. We need to become more of a development club. Right. And that goes for Cody. They've got that. You've seen Cody's best football has been played coming into dummy half. The Kiwi Test last year, he came off the bench, went to 9, and was the best player.
He's incredibly quick off the mark, high acceleration, and
He's
so elusive
got all the
and hard to
attributes.
catch.
He's got all the attributes. The toughness, you can work and build that around him, and that's what I think they've got. They've got Masala's been there, playing the 2010 final for West Tigers. You bring in Adam Whanua-Blake, arguably the best front rower with Josh Papali this year. So you can build the toughness around him.
Yeah.
It's whether or not they have the balls to make those slight adjustments. I think they have the squad to do that. But if they're going to go with the current 2 hookers and they think that they're going to take them through a season to get them in the finals, mate, it's going to be touch and go again.
Well, you know what? The advantage of having a brand new coach and someone who's wanting to put a blueprint around his ideas and his team is there's a high possibility he will want to change stuff.
Well,
up.
I think the other part of that too is Phil Gouldsey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who's been through the whole system and understands what it actually needs to win a game. And I'm no doubt with Gus being across it that the problem that you have, all right, the major problem that you have is you have the head coach, you have Gus Gould, you have all these so-called experts all around them, and then the ego gets in the way, and they forget that if they work together, that they can create the environment. It happened with Gus. If you read between the lines, it happened with Gus and Ivan. It happened with Gus and what's his name? Now they got the St George's role, the coach there, Anthony Griffiths. Does that happen with Nathan Brown? You know what I mean? So I just think if they're going to come together, like, just leave your ego hat at home.
Did you hear last week on the podcast when Gus came on? I rolled a couple of players past him, just said their name and say, "What's the first thing that pops into your mind?" And I said, "Roger Tuivasa-Sheck," and he was like, "Mate, the guy is the type of guy you build a team around." Excited by him. I said, "Jazz Tavanga." He goes, "The dude's lightning in a bottle, like aggressive, really, really good." I said, "Blake Ashford." And he goes, "Yeah, I knew Blake as a junior player, actually. He was really, really good. But I don't think he ever really quite hit his potential, although, he's still got a couple of years left. So maybe he'll go out with a bang." And I was like, he's got no idea that Blake retired last year. And Ash was so chuffed. He was like, "That means I've still got a chance. I can still finish with a bang."
Back in. Hopefully they're going to throw me a hook.
Yeah. But no, I like the idea of a couple of little changes, and hopefully it's Nathan Brown that does them because he's new to it. He will have his ideas. More likely that a new coach comes in and changes things up and does a little bit of shuffling than, say, having the old coach continuing down a vision that they had.
COVID too, let's not get too far away of the COVID situation. I think what worked in favour of the Warriors this year was COVID. Going over, being in a confined environment without having to go back out into their homes in New Zealand and bring them back and build.
Totally.
They slowly built. And they had so many hurdles to jump over. So if they've had that experience and if they get the mix right, let's talk about on the football field and get the mix right. They've shown in that environment, because it looks like we're going to head back into that same environment.
Yep.
Man, I think they'll get it.
Adversity was good for them this season. Adversity and that pressure created diamonds. Let's hope that it's more diamonds.
But those 2 diamonds aren't your hookers.
No.
You know what I mean?
I get it. You've already said we're weak on hookers. Okay, well, don't get away without saying who's going to win the whole thing. I know you've said 1 and 2 Penrith Storm again, but
I've already thought.
Does Ivan get them over the hump?
Yeah, I think Ivan gets them over.
This is it.
I think Penrith. If you're going to go and have an early bet on the premiers next year, I think they'll bet. See, the good thing about finals football is that you get the experience, and he had a lot of young blokes in there that got the finals experience.
Got to lose a final to win a final.
Yeah, it's a cliche. It's a shit cliche, but it's true. And I just think now that, and also for Ivan, I don't want Ivan to become Brian Smith, mate.
No.
I see that, eh?
Yeah, he's way too. Surely he gets with this team. At least he'll get another 3 shots at a final. Surely.
Well,
surely.
I think with the academy that they got and the juniors coming through, he can fill slots. So it's sitting there for him. He wouldn't want to lose another grand final because they'll kick him out.
To be fair too, I wouldn't actually mind Brian Smith's resume. His career resume, it wasn't too bad, but you want your championship.
More like it. No, mate, he never won a trophy.
I know. That's usually where it is. Yeah. All right, finally now, league to look forward to. State of Origin number 1, Wednesday, November 4th at Adelaide Oval. It's going to be a 10:40 p.m. start, I think, here in New Zealand. I think they're listing at 8:40.
Yeah, look, they're always great. I remember when they first come out in the. I started watching State of O in the mid '80s on VCR. You know, they were on too late. You tape them on your VCR and you go back and watch it first thing in the morning. And excuse me, I just like the whole concept of the Origin, how it comes on late, the build up to it.
Yeah, Phil Gould.
They're looking at the teams now at the moment, so the concept too is different because it's 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
So you're gonna actually get. I think that plays a little bit into the strategist's hand, like a Wayne Bennett,
Right.
Because you get them for that period of time, and you've seen him in tournaments. He's got great experience in tournaments, and he's won a shitload of them with Australia.
Yeah.
He would know how to slowly build them through that period, and he'll be putting all of his eggs into the first one to make sure they get the first one, because I reckon he thinks he can get the last one.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the chips are against them. You know, they've got New South Wales got a team that's on paper
stacked. This reminds me of the
unbelievable, mate.
early 2000s Queensland
The players
side.
they got to leave out.
Yeah.
The players have got to leave out of key positions, you know, and then they lose one player and they fill it with another diamond, you know what I mean? So
you reckon Bennett's focused on Wednesday, November 4th, Adelaide Oval. Then the Game 2's Wednesday, November 11th at ANZ Stadium. And then Game 3, Wednesday, November 18th at Suncorp Stadium. You reckon he can snag, if he can get the first, he's confident he'll snag the third.
That's exactly right. I reckon he knows that the second one's going to be too hard to get, especially with the lack of depth in his team. You know, they've got when you've got Bronco Lee and Edric Lee, the cousins probably going to be right and centre wing partner, and you got Dane Gagai and no one else. You know what I mean?
See, and Dane Gagai's nothing to crow about. I know he does well in Origin, but man, I don't know how he's had such a. This sounds terribly negative. I just don't see him as that X factor player in a position that's become so important over the years.
He steps up. Like I remember talking to Dane up in Townsville. Kiwis played Aussie up there. He's a cousin of Josh. Josh played for the Broncos. Sorry, he's got bloody CTE kicking in there. I just had a name. Josh Hoffman.
Hoffman, yeah.
Josh Hoffman. And Josh brought him to the aftermatch function. Well, Dane's, I think it's his mum's a Kiwi.
Is he big?
No, mate, he's solid. He's sort of like Clinton Tupou, you know. That's really well built. And I try to convince him to play for New Zealand. You know,
well, yeah. Well, he's got. He can.
Yeah, because of heritage.
I just don't know though. Like, if you're thinking about that's who you're talking about, being like, you look at New South Wales and they're like, wow, we've got to find room for Pappenhausen, the Clive Churchill winner, and we're talking about Gagai on the other side.
But sometimes it's really nice to have that issue. If you look back, when was it? 1995, and Queensland had a team that was like, mate, a bunch of second graders. You know, Teven was a halfback.
Right. Yep.
You know, Trevor Gulmeister was the captain. You know, and New South Wales was stacked, and they won the series.
True.
You know what I mean? And what I'm saying is that I think Bennett will get them in such a state if they win the first game that to go back in front of their home crowd to play for a State of Origin win,
They'll be hissing.
they'll be hard to beat. Even it doesn't matter who you put in the side. So look for a smoky. You know, Greg Inglis only came out yesterday and said, "Oh no, I've been talking to Kevy all year and I've decided not to play. Give a young bloke a go."
Inglesoid, like that's what the Queenslanders were thinking. This has got to, like, a smart man. If you're putting your house on it, you're putting your house on it, Kempy. A smart man says this is New South Wales.
Yeah. But
Absolutely.
But there's so many times in the Origin history that they've said that and they've gone that. So Alfie Langer's playing for Warrington, mate. He's 55. And Bennett sends an SOS and Alfie Langer comes back and gets player of the day.
Yeah.
To win the series
It's very Queensland. It's very Queensland
So
to be there.
Inglis has said no to one. I wonder if he said no to three. You know what I mean? There's all that strategy to go in it. So he spoke to Kevy, yeah, but has he spoken to Bennett? He played for him at South. You know what I mean? There's so much else going on in the background at the moment. I don't think it's as clear as what it looks like on paper. Just remember when 80 minutes is played out on the grass, and yes, New South Wales look like they have Winks running for them, but you know, even champions get beat, and I think Queensland in this scenario they'll try and steal the first one, and they know that they've a good chance in the last one.
Even champions get beat. Kempy, we'll leave it at that. If you were going to place yourself a nice little wee Bunsen burner to watch over the weekend, and a long-termer as well, Kempy's got Penrith Panthers winning the 2021 NRL season.
Get on early.
and Queensland to score the upset because it's Queensland.
Go the Maroons.
Go the Maroons.
Hey, and send out a rescue helicopter and try and find Lavina. She's hiding in some bush down in Hawke's Bay.
Yeah, she owes you 2 bottles of wine.
Of course.
All right, ka kite whānau. Thanks for joining us.